You're listening to Agile Ideas, the podcast, hosted by Fatima Abuchi. For anyone listening out there not having a good day, please know there is help out there. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Agile Ideas. I'm Fatima, CEO at Agile Management Office, Mental Health Ambassador, and your host. On today's podcast, a first-time returning guest, Karen Ferris. Karen is the director at karenferris.com, a Melbourne-based consultancy focused on organisational change, workforce resilience, and leadership capability uplift. She is a self-professed organisational change management rebel with a cause pushing the boundaries of the industry and never accepting the status quo. Acclaimed internationally as an author and a speaker with industry acknowledgement of her reputation as a thought leader, she provides both strategic and practical advice and insights to her audiences. Her ability to share her experience and knowledge ensures that everyone is empowered to make a difference within their organisation. She's also the author of 8 books on leadership change, remote working, and workforce resilience. And this year she saw the publication of Remarkable, the New Leadership Mindset. Whenever you hear Karen speak or read her writing, you know she's going to challenge you to change your mindset. In this episode, we cover a range of different topics around organisational change, the return to office mandate, leadership and workforce resilience, plus many, many more. So stay tuned, as Karen will also share a special discount code on her new book. Please join me in welcoming Karen to the show. Karen, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Thank you. I was just saying to you before that you are our first return guest, so I'm very excited to have you back here. And I was just about to say, I want to talk to you about the elephant in the room, the return to office mandate that I know you're so passionate about as well. So can you share your thoughts on the return to office mandate? You know, for, against, what are you seeing, hearing? Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I'm very passionate about it because I'm so against any mandate to return to the office. The office is just a place we go. You know, I keep saying work is what we do, not where we go. And if I do my best work at home or in a library or in a hotel or a cafe, whatever it might be, then that's where I should be able to do that work. I should have that flexibility. And I should have the flexibility to decide when it makes sense for me to go into the office, when it's worth the commute because I want to get face-to-face with my team, or I believe that collaboration will be better done in person. But it's intentional, not because it's a Tuesday, or because these mandates are saying you either must be in 5 days a week, regardless of the type of work you're doing, or you must be in 3 days a week, and we'll tell you which days. So I commute on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to do exactly what I could have done at home and been far more productive because it was focused work. I'm lucky I have a home office. I could do quiet, focused work, probably far better than I could in an office. And all the things that are being cited as, you know, oh, we need you to come back because it'll impact our culture. Well, I'm sorry, you've never had a good culture if that's the case in the first place. And, you know, I challenge anyone listening to find a definition of culture that talks about a location. It's about shared values and beliefs and experiences. It's nothing to do with the building. They talk about innovation. You and I could innovate brilliantly from where you are today, and I am. We might decide it might make sense to get together, and then we would, but it's not preventing us collaborating or connecting. And when people say, oh, you know, there's a connectivity issue, I say that's not a remote issue, that's a leadership issue. So I think we've moved on. You know, COVID gave us the greatest experiment in the way we work ever. And for employees, I think they've come out of it going, great, flexibility, autonomy. I can arrange my personal life around my professional life rather than the other way around. But yes, we've got a group of employers, and I agree they tend to be the larger organisations, who are going like, no, we want to go back to how it was pre-2020. Well, it's not going to happen, you know. And those that are enforcing that, and the research is there now, and the numbers are losing talent. People are just walking. And they'll lose that talent, and then the people left behind are the ones who have to pick up the slack. So their eyes on the door too. So it's just going to have devastating consequences. And we've already seen, Dell is the prime story, if you like, that Michael Dell said back in 22, I think it was, that organisations enforcing people to go back in the office were misinformed. It was totally wrong, and they'd got it wrong, and everyone went, well done. A year later, he says, you've all got to come back in the office. To total backflip. Then they started colour coding people based on the time that they were in the office. So when you're in the office full time, you get a green code. This goes into your performance review.
Wow.
If you're hardly in the office, you get a red code. It's just crazy.
That's going to improve culture for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then now they've said that you must return to the office or you won't get a pay rise, and you might in fact lose your job. And 50% of the Dell employees have pushed back and said, get off, go away. 50% have pushed back, say, I'll take the pay cut. And I reckon they're saying, I'll take the pay cut and I'll bide my time and I'll go elsewhere. So it's really backfired. And they've just done their annual employee survey. Yeah. It's gone through the floor.
Oh my God. You know what the challenge is? And look, I'm playing devil's advocate here. It's hard because there's probably certain companies or managers or team leaders that probably have seen, a few of those bad apples that ruin it for the bunch. Those that really do take the piss out of working from home and really take advantage. It's like, how do you balance being flexible but also dealing with that, because you don't get to see that. And I think that's maybe what some leaders are fearful of.
I think one of the big things for a lot of leaders is that they just still haven't got their head around managing remote people. Now, the person who's shirking working remotely were probably shirking work when they were in the office.
Yeah, very true.
They were not working. This is about performance management.
Yes.
Because they're remote doesn't mean that you don't manage them anymore. You do. You should know if they're not. And this isn't talking about surveillance software. Let's not go there even. This is about agreeing outcomes and deliverables and timeframes and expectations with an employee, and then checking in on a regular basis how they're going. And if those outcomes aren't delivered, then that's a conversation the leader and the employee should have. And then if that keeps repeating itself, then it's a performance management situation. That's no different remotely than it was in the office.
I think you're 100% right.
It's easy for your leaders to blame, oh, well, they're remote and that's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. I really like that, your comment around they don't know how to manage remote people. That's not something prior to COVID we've really had a book for or a course or something. And I know there's, some people out there that probably are experts in this space, but there's not enough leadership training and whatnot for that. And then we were thrust into it with COVID. And then when it comes back to, those bad apples, you're right. They're probably the ones that weren't really working anyway. Whereas my husband likes to say, chatting around the water cooler all day and didn't actually get any work done. So probably those people. But it comes back to character. So I'm guessing like those that are honest, that's their character, and they're going to be honest. And giving them the flexibility, I know for me and for my team, made us happier, because the time that you spend at home with your family, you're saving the commute, not only saving money is a bonus, but just being able to have that. And for me, like going back a few years and remembering having to call a boss and having to drive in 2.5 hours one way to get to an office, and the anxiety behind having to, feel bad because just all these things, it just alleviates that by giving them the flexibility and the choice of being adults.
Yes. It's like, I mentioned employee surveillance software, and this is, I've quoted these numbers time and time again. In March 2020, and the company is called Top 10 VPN, and they started to monitor the global demand for employee surveillance software. And it's around it went up in March 2020 by 80% compared to the same time the previous year. So we all thought that was a knee-jerk reaction. Or managers going, oh my God, I can't see them. I need to monitor keyboard strokes. The fact is, it hasn't dropped. It's maintained that level of surveillance. And when you talk about character, Fatima, it's like if you are monitoring employees' keyboard strokes, you're saying, I do not trust you.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
what's that doing to culture?
100%. Like
Yeah.
you said, the culture probably wasn't there in these places to begin with. My question, being the person who cares about process, would be, what systems and processes do they have in place to ensure that the goals are clear, the objectives, the results that we're trying to attain, and then having a rough idea as a leader of what time it takes to complete these activities,
Yeah.
and then monitoring the progress towards them. And if you don't have those systems and processes in place, then you've got to use malicious software to
Yeah.
track keyboard strokes, which we now know that people can manipulate the keyboard and the mouse with the flying fans. So
And
there's
that's
no
the crazy thing, isn't it? Everyone's talking about, productivity. And the fact is that we are, rightly or wrongly, driving employee behavior that says, I must keep wiggling that mouse.
Exactly.
Because my boss believes that the green light means I'm busy.
Exactly.
Even though I could be, deep in documentation and blah, blah. God help me if it goes yellow, because he'll be on the phone saying what you're doing.
Exactly.
And people are coming up with very ingenious ways of
exactly.
keeping the green light on.
Oh my God, it's horrible. But look, thanks for sharing your thoughts. I just thought I've got to get that one out of the way because it's a never-ending debate. Another one I wanted to touch base on. So obviously, being the change management expert that you are, I'm kind of seeing, I'm not sure if you're seeing, I'm curious. At the moment, I'm seeing a bit of a trend where, like a few years ago, with the rise of agile ways of working, I saw the PMO landscape kind of disintegrate and dissolve. Now it's kind of coming back up because organizations are realizing they need that governance. I'm sort of seeing the same pattern with change management. It seems like in a really unusual place. What trends are you seeing in the change management space in terms of organizations and their, I guess, appreciation for that role and that function?
I think it has reached a point where I'm seeing more recognition. I think there was a lot of lip service. And then it'd be, oh yeah, we need change management, but the project manager can do it. Or we'll give someone in the project management office that role. It's like, no.
Yeah.
But now I think those companies that have, dedicated resources to that function, and are embedding it in ways of working and embedding it in leadership. And it's not just it's the move now, I think, which is good. It's rather than just it's those three people there. It's becoming more embedded into the organization. More people are talking about it. We need organizational change. Now, unfortunately, we should never have called it that.
Yes.
Because when I say I do organizational change, people think I'm moving chairs and, building offices and things. But it's managing people side of change and helping people and the organization transition from current to future as smoothly as possible and successfully as possible. And I'm hearing more people having those conversations now who are not part of change management. So it's becoming, more embedded into the organization as a way of working as opposed to a dedicated function of people.
And a lot of people think that organizational change simply means it's transformation time, which probably scares a few people. But one analogy I heard today that someone I read on LinkedIn was they tried to say that change management itself isn't as important anymore. Just talk to your marketing department, who would be experts at change, and they'll be able to help you manage the change. It's just as bad as saying the project manager can do it, which, look, don't get me wrong, there's some project managers out there that probably have exceptional people skills, but it's a different skill set.
Yeah, it is. And it's, it's how many hats do you want to wear and which one gets priority? And I'll tell you which one gets priority. It's not organizational change.
No.
And it's like, training always, it's the people stuff, isn't it? The training drops to the bottom of the priority list and organizational change, because it's easy to, to sit back and say, oh, come on, of course they'll get it. There's a good reason for doing it. And, unless you've got your messaging and your communication and your engagement right with these people, and they feel that the change is being done with them, you are going to get that resistance. And that's a lot of work to do that, depending on the size of your change. But even small changes can have a major impact on people.
100%. And I think that's the key right now. If anything, the change management world, just like the PMO world, has to deal with those incremental small changes that are becoming the norm, as opposed to your large big programs of work, which, still exist, but just not as many.
Yeah. But even just the mention of AI now, sending people, I mean, I think there's a lot of hype, and that's a whole other conversation, but, it is sending a lot of people scared. And one of the things I think organisational change managers or change managers should be doing is, regardless of whether it's being adopted now or not, we know it's coming in some form. So start having those conversations.
Yeah,
the chances
absolutely.
are, it depends what your job is. But if your job is going to be partially or fully automated or taken over by AI, what else can these people do?
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that an HR conversation? Yeah, of course it is. But OCM can be part of that as well.
Oh, absolutely.
To transition that through that change that the moment it's just this black cloud that's hanging over a lot of people that, they're going, well, am I going to lose my job? Is a robot going to be doing it next?
And I think people, to your point, need to take the time to actually just understand it, even if it's not their role today, so they can be better prepared. One of the things I tend to say a lot is AI doesn't have the context. It can just provide the content. So you still dealing with people, you need that context of the environment, the maturity, the capabilities, the ways of work, all of that sort of stuff. So I think people are maybe getting a bit ahead of themselves, being fearful that AI is going to take their job, the way that maybe, the cars took the job of the horse riders and, the tractors and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So I think just take the time to look into it. And you're right, change management as a whole can really help the organisation in that capacity.
It's just allaying the fear and having those conversations about what AI is and, like you say, what it can do and what it can't do.
Exactly.
It's not going to take the world over tomorrow.
No, but there's plenty of warning signs letting you know it's coming, so pay attention. What other I know you're a change management rebel. What other status quo practices or concepts or insight in the industry are you challenging, or do you hear that's a really big misconceptions? Like anything else you can share?
So the return to the office thing is one big one that I'm really fighting that, because I just think it's the things I hear is just nonsensical. It just really is. And I'm like, where are these people coming from? So that's a real passion. Of change, obviously, I want to make change management everyone's business in the organisation and not the role of a few people. So making it, deeper into the organisation. Leadership capability uplift is also a massive one, because I really believe we have a leadership crisis. We've probably had it before 2020, but I think we're really having it now, because we've got leaders, and we've touched on this, earlier about, performance management and measuring hours rather than outcomes. We have so many, I'll call them bosses, still trying to do that. It's like, come on, the world's moved on. You need to move on. You need to do things in a different way. And they're not grasping the idea that what got them to where they were yesterday is going to stand them in good stead for today. And it's a whole new mindset shift. And in the book that I've just written, I talk about learn, unlearn, and relearn. And it was a guy, when I say guy, a futurist, back in 1970, Alvin Toffler, wrote a book called Future Shock. And he talked about learn, unlearn, relearn. And it's really saying, yes, you learn, but then you have to recognize that you have to unlearn. So things that you knew yesterday may be no longer relevant. And it's not just about learning something additional. It's saying that is no longer valid. Get rid of it. Now that's tough. So, I've spent 5 years learning this skill and whatever. Well, sorry, the world's changed and it's no longer relevant. So you have to unlearn and then prepare to relearn something different. And I don't believe the majority of leaders we have today, and I use leaders loosely. Everyone can be a leader. You don't have to have the title on the door. We have to accept that the world changes and we have to do the same. And I've had to do that in my industry. I had an IT background, but that changed so rapidly. I had to give up stuff I knew, and just get rid of it and learn totally new skill sets and new values and new ways of behavior. And until people grasp that, I think we're really going to struggle, because we are seeing leaders desperately hanging on to the way things used to be and trying to manage a new workforce of 5 generations possibly in the workforce with a cookie cutter, and I'm sorry, it's not going to work.
Do you think it's because there are organizations that are, helping people get into leadership positions, but they're not giving them any training support? Like, I know when I first became a manager many years ago, I didn't get any training. Like, I had to figure it out. And look, I probably did a lot of things wrong, but maybe there needs to be more done to support.
Absolutely. I think there's a number of issues in this space where people get promoted into and I'll use the air quotes, into a leadership position, and usually a people leadership position, because there's nowhere else for them to go. They become an expert in the field and they're stuck. So we go, oh, you have to be able to be a people leader. And they just may not ever want to do it, which is bad. But we also don't equip them to do it. And I think it was Jacob Morgan that did some research in one of his books. And he said, most people get into a people leadership role in the late 20s. Generalizing, late 20s. And his research said the first development or coaching or training they get is in the late 30s or 40s. So they could have been in that role for over a decade without nothing. Now, and the only thing they've had is the boss that went before them, who was probably a bad boss. And they go, well, that's all I know. All I can mirror is the person that was doing this job before me, who did it badly. And then we get a decade later and they go, you're telling me I need to do something very different now. And they might not have the growth mindset they need. So that's the first thing we need to teach everybody about being, having a growth mindset and being prepared to say, what I knew yesterday is no longer valid. But we do need to help people in those leadership roles, absolutely. And we do far too little. We seem to make an assumption that they'll get on with it and do it.
Everyone's too busy. Everyone's too busy to make the time. But then you're putting people, as you said, that then perpetuating the cycle of having people in these roles that probably are then not very good to their subordinates. And then there's this cycle, and then it goes back to the culture, and there's this whole never ending.
Yeah, and it's not fair on the person who's trying to be a good, because everybody generally gets out of bed in the morning and says, I want to do a good job.
Yes.
Most of us.
Yes, most
even
of
these bad leaders, if you like, want to do better.
Yeah.
But they don't know where to go because they've been left on their own, and they're sort of, doggy paddling in this sea of waves. What's next? And no one's throwing them a life vest or something to help them on the journey. And it's not only is it bad on them and causing them lack of sleep and anxiety and stress, it's bad for the people that they're trying to lead. And it's just, a really sad situation.
So here's an idea, and I don't know if I've never been a permanent employee, so I've never come across this. If you have, let me know. But we see performance reviews done on subordinates, as you mentioned earlier. But I wonder whether those subordinates can do a performance review on their leaders. I don't know if you've seen that, or if that's just an idea.
Absolutely, 360 degree feedback.
Yes.
So one of the things, and performance reviews, another thing we could have a whole other session on, but when I do performance reviews, when I do one-on-ones I don't call them performance review, one-on-one meetings on a regular basis with each of my employees, at least fortnightly. We talk about, what they've done well, where they can improve what they think. And also, so where could I do better? How could I support you better? What could I have done better over the last couple of weeks? What have I done well? And you create a safe environment where they feel safe to say to you, well, actually, Fatima, you could have communicated that better, or I reached out and you were too busy to, whatever it might be. And you have to welcome that feedback and take it on board, because that's that person's reality, and act upon it. So you can't expect, feedback shouldn't be one way. It has to be a two-way street. It has to be a two-way conversation. And that should be on a regular basis. And you might have a formal performance review every 6 months, but that's the only time you sit down with an employee to tell them how they performed. They've got no chance of fixing it because you're telling them something they did 6 months ago.
100. If you could remember, I loathe, and maybe that's why I've never been permanent, but I loathe those annual performance reviews. It's the only time of the year. Like, why can't you just give feedback? Like, as you said, maybe for some people it's monthly or whatever it might be, but incremental feedback throughout the year. That's more fair and unbiased than just waiting to the end of the year and depending on your mood that week, the feedback you give to your employees.
And your memory, you just remember what they did last week, what they did 3 months ago was just exceptional.
Exactly.
And if you tell me if it's fortnightly or monthly that there's an area I can improve, I have an opportunity to do something about it. Not 6 months and I've forgotten what the hell you're talking about anyway.
100%. They've got to make some changes there. So I want to go back to you talked about your new book, Remarkable. So you mentioned leadership crisis early in the conversation. So what you've written many books, and I know you've been writing books for many years now, but what inspired this specific book and why now?
Yeah, I think I know what inspired it was that leadership crisis. Me observing leaders trying to do the best they can. We can all talk about bad bosses, but leaders trying to do the best they can, but not being enabled to do that and not being enabled to have that mindset to say, yes, what I knew yesterday won't stand me instead. I can really, and accepting that they're not on their own. And there are people that will help them to unlearn and learn new skills that will take them forward in this new way of working that we currently have. Now, that was always the case pre-COVID, but I think it's really emphasized the situation when we're now looking at people trying to lead a distributed team or a remote team and have just absolutely no idea what to do. They're still trying to lead people as they led them when they were all in the office, all co-located, and they're now faced with, biases like proximity bias and recency bias. They're struggling when they can't see the person that they think they're not working. And I'm like, well, you could see them when they were in the office and they still weren't working. But, it's all this stuff that's going on. And I'm like, oh my God. And then you're hearing these crazy statements that people are making, like I said, about, culture and connectivity and all people will be isolated if they work remotely. They must come back. And I'm sorry, I could walk into a very busy office and feel totally lonely and isolated. It's 100%. Not a location,
100%.
So, and like we've said, watching leaders trying to measure performance based on the number of keystrokes and the hours someone's at a desk just breaks my heart. It really does. Because it's not good for them and it's not good for the employee. And the thing is, when I say that, everyone nods. We all know.
Yeah, 100%.
That, 8 hours of keystrokes doesn't mean you've delivered anything.
Exactly.
But yet that's still what they're doing.
Imagine the time they're spending on that, what they could achieve if they were focusing on their goals. It's just ridiculous.
And then the employee, like we just already said, working out covert ways of keeping the mouse moving.
Exactly.
And they should be doing
100%. 100%. And so the book Remarkable obviously is you love your acronyms. What's the acronym behind Remarkable? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I looked at all the aspects that I believe that leaders need to adapt. So it's like a bit of a toolkit, I suppose, the book that, I might say like, the R stands for resilient, that leaders and employees have to be resilient in the face of constant change. They have to see not failure, but setbacks as an opportunity. I talk about, don't bounce back from a setback, bounce forward, be better for it. So, and be able to reframe things and having open and honest conversations, etc. So I identified all of those character facets, if you like, or character traits that I believe leaders today really need to look at, and these are things that will take them forward as well. So adaptive, for example, is one of the facets, being able to change direction and adapt and adopt as you go and not being of a fixed mindset. So I picked all the things I believed and then looked at the list I had, and it just came up with Remarkable, funnily enough. So we talk about resilience, empathy, being able to empathize. I think that's really lacking. We talk about it.
Yes.
But how many times do we talk? We come across people who've got absolutely no bone of empathy in their bodies. Easier said, that mindful, being able to know your own emotions and understand the emotions of others. We've talked about mindfulness for donkey's years, but we're still not good at it. Adaptive, I mentioned, being resourceful. What's really important, we're all asked to do more with less. And resourceful comes like, well, what can I prioritize? What do I need to do? What don't I need to do? We all get swamped with so much going on. And, what can I delegate? So when I'm talking about being resourceful, I'm talking about the art of delegation. Because again, there's a lot of people who just got no idea.
No,
how to
you don't get taught that. That's not something you get taught when you get put into these leadership positions.
Yeah, so people just go, hey, John, you need to go and do that. Hello, that's not delegation.
No.
And you say that to a leader and they go, oh, well, what is it then? Tell me. They want to know, but no one's helping. Being known, the K is for known. That's having a brand as a leader. What are your values, and do you espouse those values? Is what people see what they get. So what do you want your legacy to be? When you walk out the door. Accountable is the A. So being accountable, doing what you say you're going to do. When you do that, it starts to build trust. And if you say, I said I'd do this, but I haven't been able to because, that has a major impact on your relationship with the team, and holding other people accountable as well, for doing the right thing. Being brave. So probably channeling a bit of Brené Brown, but having the courage to say, I don't know the answer to that. And that's a big one for so many leaders, because again, they think, oh, I have to have all the answers. People will think less of me if I don't. And I went, no, they don't expect you. No one said, now you're a leader, you have the answer to everything. No one ever said that.
No.
But we tend to take the leadership role on and think that's what we have to do. We have to look good in front of the team.
Yes.
Well, they know you're not being authentic.
Yes.
They know you don't have the answer. And if you start hiding behind a facade, the trust goes. They want someone who says, I don't know the answer, but I'm not the expert. You are. What do you think? Just those conversations go such a long way. And having the humility to say, yeah, I'm not the expert. And it's about being vulnerable. It's not a sign of courage, courage. Sorry, it's a sign of courage being vulnerable. Absolutely.
Definitely a sign of courage and not a sign of weakness, which some people seem to think.
Yeah, absolutely. And being authentic. The L is for listening. And when I say that, I see eyes roll. Oh, here we go. Communication and listening skills. But I tell you now, so many people have got no idea how to listen. They really don't. They think, well, yeah, I've heard what you've said. I said, no, you haven't. Play back to me what they just said, and it'll be totally different.
100%. That's if they're not on their phone at the same time, or in a meeting and distracted and all that sort of stuff. As your grandma says, you got two ears and one mouth.
That's right. Yeah, and about active listening, removing those distractions, being in the moment.
Exactly.
And really listening and validating what you've heard. And they're easy things for me to say, but they're just lacking. And again, we don't take leaders aside and help them. Do you want to be? Let's help you be an active listener. Let's do some scenarios and role playing. And I can tell you the light bulb goes on. It doesn't take long. But, that really worked. And then empowering is the last letter. So, and true empowerment, to say, here's something I want you to do. This is the outcome I think we should deliver. What do you think? It's co-design the outcome and agree. So this is the goal. This is the deadline. These are the resources you have available to you. And empowering someone is not abdication of leadership.
No.
Some people think it is. I've empowered them to do it now. You still need to be there to support anyone when they need help. And they know that they can reach out any time and say, Karen, I'm struggling with this. Or I think I've misunderstood what we talked about. But once they're empowered, they go away and they have the autonomy to get on with the job the way they see best, They can ask for help if they need it. You check in on a regular basis, a basis you've agreed with them. So you're not micromanaging.
Mm-hmm.
And the outcomes, the results are amazing. I've seen it play out. I've seen leaders, from workshops with leaders on empowerment and giving employees autonomy. And I can see they're like the rabbits in the headlights. It's like, oh, because these are micromanagers. That's all they've known.
Yeah.
They don't know else. So I said, okay, let's take one member of your team and something of low risk, smallish task. Let's start small. You'll feel safe and so will they. And let's go through these steps of agreeing the goals and the check-ins and everything else, and then get out of the way. And they come back a week later, they say, oh my God, that was amazing. That person is so inspired and motivated, and they're asking me for the next piece of work I can give them. And I had so much time back on my hands.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It seems so simple, but as you sort of narrated those acronym, the analogy and mentioning all of those, I was trying to think, is there anything else I would add to that? And you've nailed it. I actually think that everything that you've listed and that word overall summarizes, leadership in a really, really good way. And I think it makes it easy. And then to pair that with the mindset behind it, when you think about who you've written this book for, is it for those that, been working in the industry for a long time like us? Is it for up and coming leaders? Is it who is the right audience for this book?
Yeah, it's for both. It's for both of those audiences. It's for, like I said earlier, you don't have to have the title of leader bestowed on you. Yes. We can all lead. There's a lot in there for up and coming leaders, whether they're people leaders or leaders in a different perspective or just want to develop leadership skills. And for those, so for the novices and for the veterans that need to unlearn, the ones that need to unlearn.
I was going to say, need to, teach your dog new tricks, probably need to exactly be adaptive and take some lessons.
Exactly.
One thing that I wanted to circle back on that I'm keen on understanding a bit more about is workforce resilience and the role that it plays. And so what leaders can do to foster more of that in their teams, because I think that's one of the ones, going back to the comment around adaptiveness, is something that people really struggle with.
Yeah. And I was writing about resilience before COVID. And just to give you an idea, I have an aggregator which tells me all the articles and things have been written about a certain keyword. And resilience had come up with like a page or so. COVID hit, and it was pages and pages and pages of resilience. And the word just became like a dirty word. Everyone was being resilient and whatever. And, in the workplace, it was the same. We were talking about resilience and then talking about, mental well-being and everything else. And back in 2020, I wrote 2 books, and I've done a summary of them in this book, which talks about, like, a leader has 20 superpowers to be resilient in the face of constant change, and the individual has 20 superpowers. And superpower is probably an outdated word now, but what I find a lot of organizations are doing in regard to helping people be resilient, and by that I mean helping them with their mental well-being in the face of constant change, is point solutions. And, well, 2 things. One, they're treating the result, not the source of the problem. Is it workload? Is it poor leadership? Whatever it is, what's causing mental health issues in the workplace, let's fix that. Let's get to the root cause. But they're trying to fix also after, when it's too late, when people are burnt out. Now, here's the resources to help you now you're burnt out. Oh, thanks very much. Why didn't you get to me before that? But the superpowers I talk about are contextual. So they're like tools that you can pull on. So, for example, if, I'm getting really stressed at work because I've got a problem that needs to be solved, I've got a deadline, and I'm losing all self-belief that I can achieve it. And I'm really spiraling. Okay. So yoga on a Friday isn't probably going to help me.
No. Even if it's free.
Even if it's free. But if I go and look at the resilient superpowers, there's one called the problem solver. Let me pull on that one. The collaborator, let me pull on that one. And the believer, self-efficacy. So there are tools that I can pull on to try and help me in that situation. There might be others that you pick and choose, but you choose the ones that are going to work for you in that situation at that point in time. So they have to be contextual, they have to be liked by the person, they have to be personalized. You know, not everyone wants to go to the gym, not everyone likes mindfulness lessons, not everyone wants yoga or whatever. But real things that people can grab on and say, yeah, here's a tool that will help me overcome this situation that I'm currently in, and grow through from the experience. So yeah, there's individual superpowers, and leaders need to enable these individuals to be resilient. So, like for leaders, there's a superpower called, you know, the caretaker, which is looking after the mental health of people, having the conversation, open and honest conversations, putting it on the table, removing the stigma. There's the removalist, remove the stigma of mental health in the workplace. So there's two sides to the coin. There's one for me to be resilient as an individual, and one for my leader to create the environment to allow me to be resilient as well. And I think it's something we get so much lip service, and we're getting better. We're getting better. But again, we're not enabling, we're not teaching, not just leaders, but everyone in the organization to have the right conversation.
Exactly.
And with all respect, and I have a lot of respect for the Are You OK organization, but it's a closed question.
Yes. Yes.
And when you're in Australia, especially, yeah. Are you okay? Yep.
Yeah. 100%. It doesn't go far enough.
No, and then you can say, are you really okay?
Yes.
But there's better ways of asking. We need to teach people to ask better questions and identify when someone's behavior slightly changed.
Yes.
Their mood or their language, or enabling them to recognize, and then enabling them to have the conversation and not fear having the conversation, and not fearing that when you say, are you okay? And they go, no. And then the leader goes, oh shit, now what do we do?
Exactly. Exactly. And you're spot on. There actually isn't that much work being done around mental wellness training. Yeah. There is things like the mental health first aid courses, which there are out there, and they're really great. But even you know, with the work I volunteer with Beyond Blue, and Beyond Blue used to do corporate training on mental well-being, and they don't do that anymore either, because now they're focused on academic research. But there's not that much out there, and to really know what to say and what to do when someone is bordering burnout, having been there myself once upon a time, it's very, very difficult, because you may open up to someone that isn't empathetic, or doesn't give you the trust that you need, or doesn't listen actively, or maybe opens the conversation and then goes nowhere with it. So then you've let everything out, you've spoken about what's on your mind, and then nothing happens. You don't feel like you can come back to that person. So there's some real gaps there for leaders. And I don't know why they take
a lot of organizations, and I've worked with some, go, oh, well, we have mental health first aiders. And I'm like, great, not knocking that initiative, but have you removed the stigma of mental health in the workplace? Because if you haven't, no one's going to use them.
100%.
You know?
100%. Yep, 100%.
So to sit there proudly and fold their arms, oh, we've got mental health first aiders.
Exactly, but who are they, and are any of them actually leaders? In all of the speaking work with Beyond Blue, there was only, I think from memory, one organisation out of 50 that it was the chief human resource officer, basically, that was the most vocal and open about his personal mental health challenges. That meant the people in that company were very open about it. But in almost every other instance, none of the leaders spoke up about their own personal challenges, or just admitting that they have anxiety or any of that. So I think there's definitely, like you said, a leadership crisis, there's definitely a crisis in that space as well.
Absolutely. Because until you remove the stigma, you can put on all the first aiders and everything else you want, but people will not use it because they fear if people know they're utilizing it, they will be looked upon negatively, or not capable of doing the job, or underperforming. Until you get rid of that, no one's going to take advantage of all the things you've invested money in.
100%. I felt for a very long time I would be overlooked for promotions and things. So I kept it quiet for
Yes.
most of my adult life. But
Yes.
then you get to a point where you realize if someone doesn't want to work with you because you have a mental health challenge that you're open about, then you don't really want to work there or with them anyway. So
Yeah.
you just move on anyway. So I just want to kind of round out as we sort of move forward. You've shared a lot about the remarkable book, and I just before I move on, you mentioned that you will have a special offer for Agile Ideas listeners,
Yes.
some sort of book discount. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, absolutely. So if you go on to any of the online bookstores like Amazon, the ebook is going to retail now at 99 US cents instead of $8. So 99 US cents. And if you want to order the paperback, the hard copy, you can go to amazon.com US, amazon.co.uk. If you go to amazon.com.au, you're going to pay a lot more, because Amazon AU have this strange thing where you tell them what price you want to charge the book out of, and they just put any price on it. So if you're in Australia, go to karenferris.com.
Okay.
At the checkout, and you can buy any of the books, in my store. Put in the code word mindset at checkout, and you'll get 15% off.
Amazing. We'll include that in the show notes. That sounds amazing. And I know you've got plenty of quality books that I've seen and that you've written. And just to go back, you became an accidental author. That wasn't your intention back in 2011. Is that right?
Yes, something around there. Yeah.
How did that come about?
So I was in IT service management at the time. I'll try and make the long story very short. I came across a framework that was about embedding sustainability into an organization. And when I looked at it, I thought, this is about embedding change. So this is before I even stepped into the organizational change space. I was already doing it, but I didn't know I was doing it.
Yeah.
And because it was a framework and it had 50 different practices that you could use to embed change, I thought the IT people will love this because they like a framework. So I reached out to the university, Simon Fraser University, to Dr. Stephanie Birtles and her team and said, can I write a white paper or use this as a presentation? And she said, absolutely. Okay, so it was a long weekend and I started to write, and eventually the paper getting this thick, and I thought, I've got a book on my hand, because I love writing. So I was in my element. I was just, taking the activities in the framework and making them relevant to service management and putting in examples of how it could be used. So I went back to her and said, I think I've got a book. And she said, that's fine, just acknowledge my team, off you go. So yeah, I didn't mean to write the book. But that was the time that I don't like the word pivot, but moved into the organizational change space, because people then started tapping me on oh, you've written a book on organizational change, blah, blah, blah. Can we talk to you about this? And it, that's what I'm passionate about. So yeah, that started the book journey, and yeah, we're eight books later now, so or 7 since that one.
I need to get we'll probably have to have a whole nother conversation. I need some tips. I've been writing a book for years and I am not anywhere close to finish, and you're just listening to you today, I'm like motivated. I'm like, I'm going to block out next weekend and I'm going to try to finish this bloody book. So keep your eyes peeled. But well, we're almost out of time today, but our tradition of our last question is, if there's anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners, a call to action, a piece of advice, or a question to ponder before we wrap up today.
I think embrace having a growth mindset. I think that's where it really, really starts from, and be prepared to challenge the status quo. Keep asking why. For example, if the boss is saying you need to be in the office on a Wednesday, why? And keep challenging the answer, because I'll tell you, they won't have the right answer because it's a Wednesday, really. But yeah, reach out to me. I live on LinkedIn, as you know, Fatima. So connect with me on LinkedIn. Subscribe to it's a fortnightly newsletter on LinkedIn that I do. I do videos every fortnight too, on a daily basis, or look at the resources on karenferris.com.
Amazing. I will make sure I link all of that in the show notes, and make sure that everyone listening gets to your website and get that 15% discount. Karen, thank you. It's been a pleasure having you back, and I'm sure you'll be back again. But thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please share this with someone or rate it if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to follow us on social media, and to stay up to date with all things Agile ideas, go to our website www.agilemanagementoffice.com. I hope you've been able to learn, feel, or be inspired today. Until next time, what's your Agile idea?